Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Senior Living Today. With me today is Diana Wilson, Director of Nursing for Springfield Masonic Community, and Carrie Wooten, Clinical Manager of Assisted Living for Springfield Masonic Community. Ladies, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for inviting us.
So since this is your first time on our podcast, Carrie, I think, Diana, we may have had you on a few years ago, but it's been a while. Would you mind telling our listeners a little bit about yourself and how both of you got into the nursing field?
Sure. So I'm Carrie Wooten. I've been at Springfield Masonic Community for just over 9 years now. I oversee the assisted living, assistant director of nursing here. Started in nursing 25 years ago. Started out as a nursing assistant, and I worked at the hospital as a nursing assistant, went to nursing school, and started my career in the hospital at Mercy Medical Center. Basically got into nursing. My aunt was a nurse. So kind of thought that might be the area that I want to go into. That's why I started out as a nursing assistant and went to LPN school first, just to really see if that was something that was for sure going to be what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So obviously it is. So that's why I'm here.
Here you are.
Yes.
Well, I'm Diana Wilson. I've been at Springfield Masonic almost 9 years. I started out in the dementia building as a clinical manager, and then grew from there. I guess you could say I've had history of being a director of nursing. So that's, something that I've always been in tune to. Been in the nursing field for 34 years. Started as a tech at a hospital in London, Ohio, while I was in nursing school. Then evolved to home health, hospice, and then to long-term care. So long-term care has been my love. That's where I've, planted my feet. It's something that fulfills you every day. Different buildings that we've been in. Springfield Masonic has been the most fulfilling place I've been. There's a good team. There's residents that have stories that every day is something new and there's new people to meet. Taking care of people has been in my blood. I thought once upon a time I wanted to be a physical therapist, but then, I guided myself in a different direction. So again, here I am. So, we love what we do. It's hard work, but it's satisfying work.
Well, we're very grateful that both of you ended up at Springfield Masonic Community with us. So today's topic is going to be about ADLs. So this is a common term used in senior living, specifically in communities that have assisted living or skilled care or our CCRCs, which are continuing care retirement communities. So Diana or Carrie, would one of you mind telling our listeners what ADL stands for and what the definition of that is?
So ADLs stands for Activities of Daily Living, which refers to fundamental skills needed for you to be independent and care for oneself.
And let's dive into what some of those activities of daily living are. Let's go ahead and start with bathing.
Well, bathing is, an activity that you do. It's doesn't require a lot of thought. You want to take a shower every day or you want to wash up every day. So it's an activity that is just fundamental to maintain cleanliness and maintain, hygiene.
And are there some warning signs that family members might look for if their loved one maybe might need assistance with that activity?
That could be something like if they're coming to visit, mom's independent at home. They might notice that her hair is a little disheveled, or she doesn't smell always the cleanest. It could be as simple as a UTI. It could be that, she forgot to take a shower when she's usually very diligent about getting her hair done or taking a shower daily. Those are the little things that they'll notice that should get their attention to kind of take a next step in looking into what could be wrong.
And I know one of the other activities that I think a lot of us just move through our daily life without thinking about is getting dressed every day. So is that one of the activities that would fall under the activities of daily living?
It is, yes.
And that's something that, if someone were to move to assisted living, let's say at a senior living community, that would be an activity that could be helped with.
It is. That is something that we could assist with if the resident is in need of that service. Yes.
So some of the other activities that we have on our list are toileting, transferring, continence, feeding. Would you mind touching on a couple of those and what that might look like at a senior living community if someone were to receive assistance? Or once again, if maybe there are some warning signs that families should be looking for that their loved one might need assistance with those items?
So if somebody is having some difficulty transferring, you'll notice some increased weakness, difficulty standing from a seated surface to a standing position, having trouble getting in and out of their car if they wouldn't already be in a nursing facility or assisted living facility.
They could also have, be having more frequent falls or start falling. That can also be a sign there with transfers or mobility that families should be looking for as well.
They should look for like declines in those abilities.
So there's also another set of ADLs that I would like to discuss today, and those are sometimes called IADLs or instrumental activities of daily living. And some of these include trouble with maybe managing your finances, doing your own shopping, prepping and cooking your meals, maybe needing assistance with transportation, household chores, taking care of your animals. So what are some warning signs for these types of activities that families should be looking for?
Let's see. I would think that, something that you'd be looking for is if your mom or dad, typically were doing their own finances, let's say, they're starting to ask you for some help, or you start seeing bills maybe sitting around the home or where they're living at, not being paid or overdue. If you have take a look at that checkbook and you notice it's not being, balanced like it used to be, those would be signs that you could that should be alerting you that maybe something's going on. Also cooking, that sort of stuff. Housekeeping, is their house, not as clean as it used to be, not kept up like it used to be, not as tidy as that you've seen in the past. Cooking, maybe you're noticing that there's really no dishes in the sink when you're coming over or in the dishwasher, or things are, burnt. Maybe the pans are burnt. Their stove's clean from not cooking. So those are little things that you're going to want to keep an eye on.
And they might lose interest in taking care of their pets. They're not feeding their pet like they should. Or even if they're not joining, like going to church, or they're not joining the activities and the hobbies that they used to love. They don't go to the senior center, or they don't go to lunch with their ladies, friends, or things like that. Might be something to indicate that there might be a change of cognition or a change of ability.
And which do family members typically notice changes with first, their ADLs or their IADLs? Do you see that one is normally more common than the other?
Usually the IADLs are what are noticed first, because those are more complex activities that support independent living when they're in the community, and often require more cognitive skills, more thinking and more process, and different steps of their processes that they have to remember. And those are what are noticed first.
And I know this might be a difficult conversation, maybe if a family member notices that their loved one is struggling with some of these activities, whether it is the IADLs or the ADLs. So do you have any tips for how family members can approach this conversation with their loved ones, or how they should handle the situation if they do notice that their loved one is struggling with some of these activities?
I think it's just be proactive, really, be involved with your loved ones' lives, if not daily, a couple of days a week, see what's going on in the home, have those conversations. And when you start seeing little changes, I think that's a good time to start having conversations about, what the future might look like, with them slowly, gradually, versus just bring it on them at, the last moment of, hey, we have to move and do some changes here. I think that's going to be better for the person that's considering, being brought to a continuing care retirement community versus just let's go now. So I think just starting those conversations early, really being alert and in tune to what's going on in your loved one's home is important, kind of a way to start that conversation.
They could also reach out to their family physician or their parents' family physician to see if they have any suggestions, or maybe get some physical therapy or home health care in there to, kind of get some additional eyes and some assessments in place to see if there is truly a decline, or if it's, a physical ailment or an illness that could be resolved easily before they go to the next steps of needing increased assistance at home.
And I'm sure that varies for each situation. I'm sure there are some situations where maybe that person can stay in their home a little bit longer with some assistance before they actually need to move to a community. And if they do need to move to a community, how does a senior living community like Springfield Masonic Community determine what care area would best meet their needs? Are ADLs a factor in determining that?
They are in assisted living. So what we would do in assisted living, we would schedule a time to go visit with the resident in their home. We would sit down and just kind of evaluate their cognitive ability. Then we kind of look at functionally where they're at, what type of services that they might need if they come to our campus, and where the best place would be for them, whether it's, in the social model assisted living, a medical model assisted living, or in the healthcare setting.
And let's say that once somebody moves in, they need assistance with a certain set of ADLs, but the longer they stay with us, maybe their needs change. How do you handle that? Can they move from maybe one tier to another, or from one care area to another if needed?
They can. So in assisted living, we after they're admitted, every 3 months, we do another evaluation. If we're noticing changes, typically every 3 months, but if we're noticing changes more frequently, we can do it, as needed, and we can change their tier level, increase their nursing services that they're currently on. When we're noticing those changes, that's the time that we would have conversations, with them and or their medical power of attorney of what we're seeing and the changes that we need to make. And certainly if that changes the tier level, that is a conversation that we have as well to keep everyone informed of what's going on. If it's something where they're needing additional assistance that, they're no longer appropriate for our assisted living, then, I would talk with Diana and, we would look at that for transitioning someone over to the healthcare setting.
And that could involve the need for like a secure building, like our Pathways building, where they might have, first stages of Alzheimer's disease or middle stages, just depending on where they're at in their cognition level at that time. We could bring them to the secure building, or we could also bring them to long-term care, give them a skilled stay if it's only a short-term issue or a post-hospitalization. Then they would get physical therapy evaluation, occupational therapy evaluation, and speech evaluation to evaluate all of their abilities.
And I think that's one of the big benefits of choosing a continuing care retirement community when looking for senior living is that you do have that peace of mind. If your needs change or if you need a higher level of care, you have the ability to move to that within the community rather than having to find a new community to move to.
It could be temporary, a temporary stay at assisted living or the SNF, the skilled nursing facility, or it's also an opportunity for a long-term solution for some.
So as we close out today, do you have any suggestions for our listeners who might have a family member who's starting to struggle with their ADLs, or maybe they have recently moved their family member into an assisted living community and, they're just struggling with that transition process? Do you have any advice for those family members?
They should remember it's a team effort. The staff here at Springfield Masonic are involved in assessing their loved one every day, but they're also part of that equation. If they see something wrong, they could be status quo and then show decline in cognition or ability to transfer, not eating as well, because they spend the most time with them. Although we're with them too, they know their loved one best, and they can share that with the team, since it is a team effort and an interdisciplinary team approach to be part of finding solutions if there are some, or what should be the next steps for them. So we can give them that direction if it comes to that.
Well, it was such a pleasure having both of you with us today. You really did a great job at breaking down what ADLs are for our listeners and explaining some of the changes that they might need to be on the lookout for with their loved ones. So thank you for sharing that information.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
For our listeners, as always, be sure to like and subscribe to the Senior Living Today podcast so that you never miss a new episode. And we will be back again in 2 weeks.